Hey everyone, this is On coming to you with this month's Connecting Codes video, where we take a look at the insights of the energetic patterns of what's happening in our world events and what we can expect to show up in our world news. So this is not a prediction of, a specific event involving certain people are going to happen on a certain date at a certain time. It really is where I take a look at the energetic patterns, which is what I have a gift for, is understanding the energetic currents that are present and what types of energies and things will happen under those currents. And a lot of times you'll still have to make some of your own connections with that, but you may see something in the news that comes up and it's like, oh, I remember her talking about people behaving that way. And that there would be a greater aspect of this particular type of thing going on. So it kind of helps us know where the focus is going to be. It helps us to understand more about the state of mind people are going to be in, things that will rise to the surface, things that are going to come up into the news, things like that. And it also gives us an idea of what we need to be paying attention to in regards to some of those things. Now, if you're not familiar with my work, I am the author of The Code Journey, and I'm sorry, I haven't pulled out the 2026 edition yet. This is the 2025. Every year I put out a new edition of this book, which you can find on my website, compassioncodes.com. And on that website, you could just go to the books tab, select the code journey, and then it'll get you the links directly to the purchase pages. Sometimes Amazon likes to hide me. We all know how that goes. It's better sometimes, but sometimes they like to just hide me and not make me very searchable. But that's okay. I'll keep putting the work out, and the people who need it will find it and get to it because it does help people to make wise decisions in their life. It does help people to find that balance between the outer world and where their heart is at and what they need personally. And it helps them to maneuver through the world in a compassionate way, but to also be realistic about what's happening and to understand maybe some of the currents or some of the connections behind what we're seeing when we hear these news articles come out. Because as we know, the last few months, there has been so much connected to psyops and deception and lies, and it's been such a huge prominent theme over this past year. And that's been very confusing for people. It's been hard for them to interpret things that have been going on. And this work, while it's designed for sort of a self-help daily guidebook sort of component, it does also help us maneuver through things that are happening that maybe we don't have a lot of control over, things that we can understand. So sometimes when we look at something and it feels very scary, we know energetically there's something else going on and it's not maybe as scary as it looks. Or just even having that hope of something is going to work out even when it feels scary when we're in it. So I think that's part of what this work does. And I have several people that do like to find the connections with the world events. So let's jump in here. We'll be talking about what's coming in here for December 2025 and what we can expect to be showing up. Now, in the overall month of the influences, it's going to get very interesting because we have some odd pieces that don't always really connect with world event types of things. So, for example, a lot of traditions. Traditions are going to be very big. So, upholding those, embracing those, creating new traditions, I think are going to be interesting. And so, what we might see come out in the news is old traditions in relation to our countries and the importance that they have in relation to the founding of countries or the cultures of a country or the major belief systems in a country. And what those are about. And I think, too, we may find more countries and world leaders observing traditions than what we have seen in recent years. And traditions are an important thing. They uphold some divine rhythms to a certain extent. You know, of course, it all varies depending on what the actual tradition is. They help kind of keep us in synchronicity with natural rhythms a lot of times. And in old times, they had a lot to do with people just joining together as a community. You know, caroling used to be like that. It was just about people joining together for an evening to sing Christmas songs and to enjoy doing that. You know, trees, the lighting of trees, the decorating of trees has a lot of different um, aspects to it that relate to a lot of different cultures and different belief systems along the way. That's a prominent thing there. But when you unfold some of this, and I encourage people, you know, go out and check some of these different ones out, even if it's not your practice, your belief system, your culture, because there's some really gorgeous, beautiful traditions this time of year. So I think we're going to see more of that featured in the news this year. I think here in December, more of that is going to be coming out. And I could see this, especially maybe with some of the Jewish traditions where the Jewish culture has been in the news a lot lately. I could see this with um, some of the Nordic, the European traditions coming out because they've been in the news a lot lately. So, you know, a lot of these things also bring people back to their roots, bring them back to the origins of their cultures in many ways. And that's, you know, part of the traditions there. And but I also encourage people, you know, see what else you can start. And maybe you want to use this time of year to say, you know, let's start a tradition of a peace meditation, or let's start a tradition of just joining together in some silence and honoring that, you know, space of inviting in God or divine source into our world for a while. You know, as we wind down in the year, we're coming into the darkest night of the year, and you know, part of what connects in with certain traditions is going to be just bringing some light into that darkness. And that's a beautiful thing in many religions, many belief systems um, out there. But I think we also have to be careful of different traditions being slandered because we definitely have the extremist groups out there who like to slander other people's traditions and other cultures' traditions, and they dredge up all kinds of information, making it evil when it's not really based in evil. They've stretched it with symbology and different things. So I think also there could be some controversy come up around that, and we want to be very careful with that. Also, things that we see happen in the news, things that come up, maybe orders that get signed, laws that get signed, whatever. Some of those things may just happen much more in the moment, is what I'm seeing, as opposed to being planned things. So we might kind of get some of those shocks a little bit of like, where did that come from? I didn't see that one coming. And we may have a little bit of that that goes on as well. And just realize that some of these things weren't necessarily a planned things. I mean, I know we have a lot of things that are very carefully thought out. A lot of things are well orchestrated that are happening in our world. But in this month, I think there's going to be a lot more that wasn't planned. You know, it was just an option. It showed up. Somebody said, hey, let's try this one. Let's try this path. Let's try this possibility and see what happens with it. A lot of people that we do, you know, one of the cautions that's coming up in the monthly energy is that people may feel more of a sense of lack or loss of command over their life. And that pulls at my heart, honestly. And this is probably going to hit people who have been struggling for quite a while, and the people who are sincerely struggling. And I think that with some of the narratives out there, we've got to remember to not just clump everybody in one category. You know, like everybody who's homeless is not a drug addict. or loser or lazy bum or things like that. It's not to say that there aren't some who are, but there's, definitely people who are not that. And in our desire to be right or to have the truth come out about things, we still need to hold some compassion and sensitivity in the process of that. We don't have to shame and chastise something because circumstances took a bad turn in their life. And it happens to a lot of people. So I think this time of year it's harder because a lot of people do feel more of a sense of inadequacy, especially in a world that puts a lot of emphasis on presents and gifts and material things. And when they can't do those things, they feel less adequate in the world. And that makes them feel like they have less and less command over their life. And this is particularly true, I think, with people who are just trying to get by, or people who are struggling financially. And, it's strange to me when I hear them talk about those people who don't make very much being under $100,000 because I've never even been close to $100,000 a year income in my life, not even in management positions, not even close to it, not even close to it. Um, so yeah, that still shocks me a little bit. um, in there. So I think really with this, we do have to have a little bit of careful because there's a lot of people out there, they want command over their life. They're trying to do things in their life, but they don't have it. I could probably count myself in that, but I think also some of the things that are coming up, like I've seen so much push with the AI, with, Elon and his robots and China and their robots and things like that. And so much push, 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 push on this that it's really making people stop and go, well, where do I fit in? What's my role left as a human being? If you take all of these things away and, they forget that, some people that work is a sense of value and purpose for them. And they don't want everything taken over. Um, there's a lot of unfavorable paths that can really go down. And it just makes people feel like, okay, so what if you give me a great income? That doesn't matter if I have no command over my life and no choice in my life and no ability to choose what I want or um, to enjoy what I want. Uh, we're really walking some tough lines. So I think this is going to be a big thing, maybe a big sensitive spot for people. Um, and I think some of the things that we're going to see in the news are going to make people recognize, what do I have command over in my life? And I think it's a good thing to realize that in some ways we have more command than we realize. We just don't always exercise it. We just don't always utilize our choice. And I think that's where we have to go back and say, yeah, I won't do business with certain places, or I'm going to minimize my business with certain places because I want to deal with people and not robots. Um, and I want to deal face to face with people when I can do that. And I want to support my local farmers and those sorts of things. So I think it's going to be I think that's actually going to be a bigger point than we realize in there. I think we're also going to see a big push to be extravagant, to spend a lot of money, um, to even go into debt for material things. And this is going to be the people who don't feel as secure, the people who are working in greed, who are working in materialism, especially. It's like, oh, we got to do what all the neighbors are doing. We got to do something better than them. Our friends are doing this. We've got to do something better than them. And we're really going to need to let that go. But I think there's going to be a lot of pushing because there's a lot of people that are feeling like I'm just getting by. I'm just surviving. And I think we're going to see heavier marketing pushes out there of, hey, we'll give you this great financing, or we'll do this, or you won't have any interest for so many months, or whatever it is to push people into high-end items, very materialistically based things. And people are going to have to think about that. They're going to have to really stop and go, really, is it worth it? Is it worth the debt? Is it worth the extra stress? Is it worth the extra headaches? Is it worth the worry, the anxiety, you know, doing without things that we need? And, usually the answer is no on that. So be ready for that. Be ready for that push towards extravagance in there. This is where we could even see things come out. Like if there's something that they want to push, let's say they want to push going to Mars, they want to push the robots. Hey, you can now, put your payment down for your robot that's going to come out in 3 years from now, in 2028 or 2030 or whenever it is. You can start financing that right now. And you know what? There's people that are going to go for it. But we've got to be really careful about those things. Um, and again, just not buy into it. If it's going to push you into debt, it's not worth it. And ultimately, these material things aren't going to matter in the long run. We want to come back to what holds real value, and that's going to be experiences. We're also going to see a big increase in aggressiveness and misuse of authority to gain compliance. So again, this is going to be another, in some ways, this is kind of a form of bullying tactics, in a way. This increase in aggressiveness to get things that people want. And again, I could see this coming out around AI technology. I could see this coming out around robotic stuff. It's like they want people to get used to complying, to giving up everything to a robotic society, giving up their dreams, giving up their businesses, giving up their jobs, giving up, pretty much everything. And what they want to do is give you something material. But you know what? You can't buy, you can't buy certain things. And it's always a struggle because there's a certain amount in the spiritual community that says, yeah, we shouldn't be working, and there's a certain amount that people will say, well, this is, isn't it much more natural for us to focus on our connection on this and that? And it's a tough balance to find. And yes, to a certain extent, if you have a non-monetary society and stuff, but if that society is run and controlled by AI, then that's a whole different ballgame. That's not running in divine alignment. And I know there's people that are going to disagree with me on that, and that's okay. They can disagree with me on that. Um, but it's a tough balance to find in there. But people don't realize, even the people who are very aware of where they give power over to government and rulers and things like that, they don't see how they're doing exactly the same thing with AI. So I think we have to be careful anywhere that people are getting aggressive, getting pushy, forcing things on us, using their power to say, well, you're going to have to do this anyways in 2 or 3 years or 5 years, so you better just do it now. Why not just do it now? Look, we're going to make this fun. Look, won't it be great? You'll never have to cook a meal again. They don't realize that part of the human component is doing these things. Part of doing these things is a connection to God or divine source. And when you take those things away from people, they're taking away that connection. And I think this is it's an important thing for us to keep our eyes on, and we need to stay alert, and we need to be able to stand up for ourselves, and we need to say, you know what? You're not going to bully me into these things. Don't care, because I don't want some robot doing anything for me. I don't want them fixing my meals for me. I don't, I don't want them. I don't want them doing all of this stuff for me. Um, we don't realize the dangerous territory that we're going into with it. Um, we are likely to see headlines that are going to be connected to an increase in depression, which is going to be due to people who are just trying to survive. They probably have been in the survival mode for a long time, and that will be another one of the things that they will use to gain compliance and control over people. Well, look, if you weren't so stressed about making money all the time, then, you wouldn't be in this depression. If you didn't have to work all the time, you wouldn't have these health issues. You see how they come into these things? Well, look, we can just give you this gene therapy that's going to modify your genes and it'll change your whole outlook on life. And you don't ever have to worry about having disease or this or that again. And there's a lot of people that think, oh, that sounds really good, that I wouldn't have to deal with that. They're not looking further down the line at the consequences. They're not realizing the cost of those things, which is probably greater than what they're dealing with for most people in there. Um, but we're also going to see some good stories. We're going to see some feel-good stories come out. I think we're going to see some things highlighted in the news that have more to do with um, communities that are coming together, charities that are helping people out. I know in my own community here in Maine that they do some wonderful things. They do some wonderful things around the holidays where people come together and the money goes towards different charities. And some of those charities are wonderful charities, and some of those charities I couldn't stand behind, no matter how much money I had, um, because I know the corruption behind them. So, thinking about that, when you're thinking about maybe I want to go help somebody in need, go as local as possible. Look for the organizations that are not connected to big corporations. I know I said this, I think, in my last video, but even like our veterinaries, a lot of them are owned by a bigger company now, even if they were family owned recently. A lot of them are selling out to these companies and allowing corporate takeover of these veterinary practices, and it's not good. It's a bad scenario that's going on there. It's a dark scenario that's going on there, and I won't even get into it because it breaks my heart too much to even think about it, let alone what's there. But they're not working for the benefit of animals, and I'll just leave it at that in there. But I think we're going to see more of these feel-good stories of communities helping those in need, helping the people, focusing on community gardens, focusing on animal rescue, um, various things like that. And I think that that is going to be helpful for people. People need to know that there's good people in the world, and they need to know that there are good things happening in their community and that their community cares. And I've seen that a lot in my community, that they really stepped up to help people who are struggling. And I think that, when people hit challenging times, they join together. The restaurants pitch in, the restaurants open up. Like one of our churches does a soups on, and all of these different people and even some of the restaurants donate different soups. And, a lot of the seniors go to that, and it's a meal for them, and it's a healthy meal. And our local bakery that uses a lot of pretty decent local sourced ingredients will donate things to them. Um, and we're blessed, we're really blessed in that way. But any community can do this. And it's just a matter of finding the people who want to do it and who are willing to do it and who will coordinate these things. Now, from the 1st through the 21st, we're going to see coming up where true leaders are going to be favored. So those leaders who actually are looking out for the welfare of the people in their country, or their organizations, they will have wisdom to share. And they are the people who are creating positive experiences while making the accomplishments. So, obviously for a company to stay in business, they've got to make a profit. And they've got to help people, but they will find ways to make doing that enjoyable for the people involved. Uh, I remember Jesse worked at a really nice resort, and every year, I mean, they did things that valued their employees. Like every Thanksgiving, they gave their employees like 20-pound turkeys. Um, every summer they did things for the employees' families and had pool days for the kids. And they did things like if they were getting rid of things, they would put it in a certain area and whoever wanted it could take it for free. Um, at Christmas time, they would bring carolers onto the property, and everybody had the ability to go listen and to see if they wanted to. They would do dine around events for some of the staff to get them familiar with what the different establishments on the property did. So there's a lot of great things that can be done to create great experiences. And if somebody is a strong leader, they're leading from that wisdom, not from a desire for power and control over people. People are going to need time to process things. Um, and, some of the lack or the physical challenges um, that go on in our life at this time, that'll come on, and we might see headlines that come up in the news that say, people are suffering or there's all these challenges or things are not profiting as well or whatever the headlines are. um, People are going to need time to process things, and they're going to need time to um, some of those challenges are not real challenges. They're not real concerns or real worries. They may feel like it when we read about them, but they won't, or hear about them on the news. Um, but they won't be real challenges. They're just passing things, they're just passing. They're just passing through. They're just part of the processing. They're part of the transition that we're in. So I would not get too wrapped up in things that feel a little scary or that have a deprivation twist to it. Um, I would just take that as a time to kind of rest and have a break in things. And we might even just see a tapering down in some of the headlines going on in there. So this is an opportunity that we want to just kind of step away from some of that and allow ourselves to be able to process some of what's going on in the world and not feel like we have to, catch every headline out there in things. Um, there's going to be probably headlines or news coming up about increase in health issues, um, how vulnerable people are. This could be some of the scare tactics that are put out there. This could be connected to some of that deprivation energy, like, oh, don't go out shopping or don't spend your money in these stores because you're gonna, get sick if you do. And it's like, you know what? Every year, if you go out into a crowd, it doesn't matter what time of year it is, you have that possibility of getting sick. People are coughing, people are, spreading stuff around, they're traveling, they're picking up germs. That's it. And we have to know when not to buy into things, but it's also that awareness point to say, okay, if something is spreading around, then let me focus on those healthier foods. We have a lot of great holiday foods that are very healthy to eat. If it's something that's popping up in an area you are, maybe you shop in a time that isn't as busy as other times. I mean, holidays are kind of busy all of the time, but for example, if you're in an area that's a big business area, maybe you go shop in the morning on a weekday as opposed to Saturday afternoon. Um, because there would be less people out at that time. Or maybe you choose to shop in smaller stores instead of big department malls or things like that. So we always have some of those choices, but we do want to be careful of some of those scare tactics, and at the same time, we also want to use them to take some precautions that we need to take for ourselves in there. We need to know and stand in things that are value um, based, worthy, you know, um, to stand in our own value and worth in things to be successful. So, for example, like him or not, one of the things that Trump has said, is we're being respected. We know our value and our worth now, and the U.S. has a lot of value and worth. even if you remove him from the picture, there's a lot of value and worth in our country. So, and different countries have different things that they have value and worth in, and different based on the resources that they have. And we need to know that if we're going to be successful. Um, if we don't own that, if we don't honor that, it's going to be very hard to be successful. If a country doesn't know their value and worth, they're going to sell out to um, corrupt people in power. They're going to go for the money. They're not going to stand up for their citizens and the people in their country. So always having to look out for that. Um, we must not sacrifice quality and integrity in our work. This is an important thing. That is part of increasing value and worth as a country. If you have places where one country, you have, say, three different countries and they all make the same product, and one country does a really great job on the quality, and another country, makes the product maybe really cheap, but their quality is so poor, and you're going to have to buy six of them in the amount of time that you buy the one. You really haven't stayed in integrity. You really haven't saved any money in there. And we want to look at that. Who's got that focus on quality and integrity? Um, because again, that stands in it and that earns a certain amount of respect. And that does bring success, whether we're talking an individual or a country, and seeing who is willing to do that, who won't necessarily cut the corners on quality. I'm not talking about, cutting excesses is different than cutting corners on quality and integrity and things. So, um, we've got to know that. And it's important that we don't go into competition. And I think this is one of the things if each country, for example, knows their value and their worth, they don't really have to compete with each other. There are places where aspects of competition, not full-on competition, but aspects of being competitive, which is not so much a competition, but being fair about things, is important. But, this just general competition of I'm going to prove I'm better than you sort of thing. Yeah, there's some people that thrive on that, but it in the end doesn't really prove anything, because when we're so busy proving things to other people and trying to be better than them, a lot of times we're not focusing on that quality and that integrity. We're just residing in a space of insecurity that um, that means nothing in the end. The people that are highly, highly competitive, a lot of times they will just sell out. And that is something we have to be very, very careful of, and especially our world leaders. Um, you know, Doing our best is one thing. Being good at what we do, um, doing things in a quality way with integrity is wonderful. But competing just for the sake of competing because we need to prove to the world and have everybody recognize that this is the best. I mean, there's a certain amount of that goes on in countries because they've, again, it's about earning respect to a certain degree. But that being said, when it's only about that, it can also put a country in danger, or its citizens in danger, because that's where somebody just doesn't care. So we have to use a little bit of discernment around that competition factor in there and be careful of that in there. What we are going to see also is an increase in generosity and compassion to those who are in need and trying to help themselves. So I think that we're going to see more things rolled out for the middle class and lower class people. When we say that, not that they're lesser than, just that they're a lower income earning group or a working group of people in there. And I think there's going to be more things coming forward. Again, some things probably unexpected that will come forward to help people, whether that is a reduction in cost in some ways, whether that's um, getting gas prices down lower. There could be a variety of ways that that could come around and help um, those people that are trying to help themselves. I think that there's going to be, maybe opportunities for certain things. We may hear, like in the US, we may hear more about the dividends during the month of December and what's going to happen with them. And again, some of those things may come up kind of last minute. They may change or refine something last minute around them. Um, but what this is going to do, and one of the things that we're also going to be hearing about and needing to honor and respect is we're going to see this separating out of those who are in true need versus those who are just freeloading. So again, we've got to be careful that we just don't lump everybody into one category because there are people who are on our food benefit programs like the SNAP program or welfare types of programs or disability or things like that. And the answer is not to alleviate it because those people actually need it. A lot of those people worked very, very hard to be able to have those benefits as they need it. And, I understand that people who are 20 something, 30 something, they don't really understand what it's like when you get into your 70s and your 80s and you start to have physical issues and you can't do the things you did. You can't operate at the pace that you used to operate at. I mean, I'm going through a lot of that myself now because of different things that I deal with physically, and they're catching up to me, and I always thought, oh, if I just take care of myself, if I just eat healthy, if I just do this, if I just do that, if I stay active, if I keep my mind sharp, I won't have to worry about those things. But circumstances in life happen, and sometimes these things still catch up with you. So the key is we're going to hear more coming out about people who are freeloading on the system, but we need to not be caught up in that division about these narratives because there's a lot of people on the system who are not freeloading, who are sincerely in need, who sincerely need assistance. They worked again all of their life, decades and decades out of their life, in many cases, 50 years of their life. And, they are not even close to what seems to be considered the average income now. I don't know of anybody around me that I personally know of making those so-called average incomes that they talk about, but that's just me personally. But I know there's people out there that are, and apparently plenty of them because they're now more of the majority, based statistically. But we're going to see this separating out, and we're probably going to see a lot of narratives around here trying to make like everybody on in need of food assistance a piece of trash. And you're going to see other narratives that say, um, look at all these people that are suffering because this is being removed or that financing is been cut or things like that. So we're going to see that shifting where we're going to start to really be informed of these two different groups of people. And as somebody that has to have some of those benefits to make it, um, there are those of us who actually need it, but I'm also not pro of the freeloaders. I'm all for getting the freeloaders off the system because there's plenty for the people who need it, who really sincerely need it, like our veterans, our seniors, um, people who are disabled and they're not able to work a regular job or do various things. Um, there's a big difference between them and those people who are freeloading. If we take the freeloaders off, if we take off the people who aren't entitled to stuff, there's plenty. There's plenty, and it's really not an issue. And, at some point down the line, as you age, for you that are younger, um, you're going to want some of those benefits around. Trust me. I never thought I would be one living off the system. I never thought I was one that was going to have to draw on it, and I still draw as minimally as I possibly can. But you know, it's happening, and I'm glad it's there, but it's happening. So let's be very, very careful about those narratives. We don't want to go into this massive division over those types of narratives and just realize there are people on both aspects. And most of the videos that go around are paid influencers. They're not real people doing stuff. So, they go out, they film themselves, they get a group of people together. It's like setting up a stage. It's like setting up you know, a movie clip or something. It's all staged. So don't buy into that stuff. From the 22nd on, so basically our last week and a half of the month, um, we're going to see that caring and that compassion energy continuing on. So continuing to see things come up for those who are in need, focusing on those populations, those groups of the population that are in great need, who are struggling to take care of themselves, who do need some assistance. I think also, though, in this last week and a half, we're going to see more harmonizing coming around, more acceptance coming through, because there are a lot of people that even if they're working good jobs, they may have family or parents or somebody else who is in need as well. And I think this is an important aspect. Again, we don't have to support people who are taking advantage of things, but we do need to support people who are in need. And so if we can get to that acceptance and the harmonizing of things, that's going to be huge because that is the biggest way to get past a lot of this garbage that's out there is to harmonize and to stop being in division, to stop battling one another, to stop being in this fight and to start having some good discussions. Um, we're going to be seeing things in this last week and a half where solutions may start to come up, or we're going to hear about looking to aspects of our past, our ancestral wisdom. And this is not about our bloodline necessarily. This is about looking at the way different cultures have handled things in the past and the way that they're handling things now. And looking to the wisdom of different cultures and ancient times to create solutions. They were there, and this could be a good thing for those in more natural or healing modalities, because a lot of the solutions that were used were very natural solutions. They were spring baths, um, they were sound, they were tuning fork based, they were energetic therapies, they were medicinals, herbal medicinals. So we'll have to see, but I think we're going to see some things, some of the solutions that we see come up, or that they're going to try, and that we'll hear about will be based in ancestral wisdom. So it's going to be interesting to see that connection come through. Um, we're also going to see some things that are going to come up that are going to be distractions. And those distractions may lead some of the decisions to get delayed, put on hold. Um, and in some ways, I think this is good because the mind is not necessarily clear in this last week and a half. So making major decisions is maybe not the best move for somebody in a position of power. So things that they do decide during that time or contracts they sign during that time, um, probably are going to have to be redone or adjusted along the way. Um, so we want to look at that. So I'm not worried about it. Don't get anxious. If you're waiting for something to come through or you're really hoping a decision is going to be made on certain things and it doesn't happen, don't stress over it. Really don't. It's a temporary delay, and in the long run, it'll be better if it's not handled under some of these influences that we're under. We want a clearer mind for some of those things to go through, and we need to filter out the greed. So that will be another aspect of why things might be put on hold, is because there may be some sort of greed or manipulation or deception or something involved there that you know, things need a closer look at. They need to be brought into integrity more before they can move forward. A lot of people are going to be desiring freedom from their restrictions and they want to focus on things of true value. So we're going to see some reevaluating of priorities during this time. And the good side of that is there's going to be a closer look at not just about how to make money, but how to have quality of life. And this could be a two-edged sword because on one hand, they will use this to try to sell people into things, kind of like Elon is doing. Um, Look at this great quality of life you can have if you let robots do everything and you let AI take over everything. You know, that part I don't support. That's me personally. Everybody has their own opinions on things. But then there will be other people who will be looking at it saying, yeah, we need to make some investments in our nature spaces. If we have to draw on land resources for certain things, we need to make sure that we're replenish them in other ways, and we're making sure that they're not being totally depleted. So I think definitely there's going to be this component. How do we get people, things like how do we get people to perhaps, and this would connect with ancestral wisdom and a solution, how do we get people to a point of where um, a basic household needs could be taken care of by a single income on a 40-hour week? Yeah, let's figure that one out. Let's figure that one out because that took a lot of pressure off people, because then you worked your spouse worked a job to have the extras and to have enjoyment, but somebody could at least pay for the necessities and on a single income at 40 hours. And of course, when we get down to that, what happens? If you get people off of working, 60, 70, 80-hour weeks, what's going to happen? Their health is going to be better, which means there's going to be less drain on the system. So, I mean, it actually makes very logical sense to um, get people into a better quality of life because they won't pull on the system as much. They won't have as many issues where they need to pull on the system as much if we can do that. So it's going to be interesting to see what pops up with that. Now, the actions that we're going to be seeing taking place, hope and inspiration are going to rise. And I love this. I think we're going to see some things coming out that are going to give people some hope. It's going to inspire them that there is possibilities um, that things might be turning around. Um, and this is going to happen where others have succeeded in facing the challenges we are in. So if a country is having certain challenges, maybe like Australia, if they're having certain challenges with things that are being implemented there, and they see America coming through things and starting to improve and starting to turn around, that gives hope and inspiration. Just as, when America's been in this turmoil, they got to see some of the other countries getting turned around and having some, positive things happen and having things start to flourish, and that gives them hope and inspiration. So I think that's where we're going to see that come from. And so that's, again, some more feel-good news stories out there. Um, Opportunities for self-sufficiency to increase and to help people be strong on their own. Again, I think we're going to see some unexpected things come in that are going to get maybe signed, executive orders, whatever they are, or other cuts or whatever that are going to come through that is going to give people more choice. So, like a lot of people are concerned about the healthcare system in America. Well, if we get rid of Obamacare, all these people are going to suffer. Actually, I think what's going to happen with this is that I think it's going to give people more opportunities. It's kind of like school choice. School choice is a great thing because it allows kids who normally would not have a good education to go to better schools, to go to schools where it's safer for them to go to. Well, I think that we're going to see a similar thing, and it all depends on how it's set up, of course. But if it's set up where you get paid a certain amount of money every few months or every month for your health care, it puts the accountability in your hands. In other words, you have to build up your own resources. And this, when you start to take some of the insurance companies out of this, what happens is your medical care can become more affordable for people. If they set it up really well, I don't know whether they will because I haven't had a chance to research it all, but if they set it up really well, it could again open opportunities for alternative health care. So maybe somebody can't, like, I can't take most medications. I can't do the medications that are out there. There's a lot of things that won't work for my body and the things that I deal with. Um, and that includes the gene therapies and things like that. But uh, there are things that are holistic things. For example, reflexology things, lymphatic drainage massage. There are different things like that where people could go and get some of those treatments and then end up doing more preventative care um, for things along the way. So again, when we pull some of these systems out, it's not that people are going to be left without care. It's going to be more that people will actually have more choice about their care and where they want to spend their resources um, in there. And I see it kind of, it's almost like having a savings account. And, if you're good at saving, you'll have money there when you need it for something. If you're not good at saving your money, then, that's something you have to deal with. But having the choice of things, and I think that it may be set up like certain other programs where, um, you'll it can only be used for healthcare things. Like you can't tap into it and go, you know, buy a home with it or something like that. It's got to be used on medical care things. So I don't know. We're going to have to kind of see on some of that, but I do see people desiring more freedom from restrictions, more choice in things. And I think we're going to see more policies come up based around that as well. And I think that this aspect of increasing self-sufficiency, this is a very strong move. The leaders who do this are standing in a lot of confidence. The leaders who increase our self-sufficiency and our choice and our ability to be strong on our own are the leaders who really are developing something that is thriving and they're really nourishing their own citizens in thriving in their country. And of course, then that makes a strong country. And these aspects of these actions we're going to see taken again. This is the 1st through the 15th. But we do have to be careful of those who want power and control because they are going to be seeking out battles. They are going to be involving themselves in power battles, and they're going to be trying to add greater restrictions. So we definitely got to be careful of those people. Now, from the 16th through the end of the month, a lot of the actions we're going to be seeing taken are going to be around honoring healthy indulgences and stepping away from what breaks our spirit. So again, this is this renewal of hope, showing us that yes, we can have a little bit of indulgence. Yes, we can get a little breathing room, or we can, do something a little extra as long as we're not going too extravagant, as long as we're not getting lost in that, we'll be fine. So I think, that's going to be a positive thing that comes around. And in America, that could be more news coming out around the dividends, even if they're not paid during this time. That news increases the spirit in people. Again gives them hope in there. Those that are in materialism may try to break our spirit. So again, those really dictatorial leaders, they may be trying to break the spirit of the people around them because they need their people weak. If their people aren't weak, their people won't comply. And that's the way that they work their system. So that's another thing that we have to watch. We see the EU or European nations putting more and more restrictions on people. I mean, some of the restrictions are absolutely absurd when you get into them. Sometimes I shake my head. I'm like, I can't even believe that that's a thing. Like, I can't even remember. There were some really absurd policies that came out recently on stuff. Um, we're also going to see during this time, it's going to show us what is practical, responsible, cost-effective ways of doing things. So again, I think that can give us hope to show, look, we have these other options. We can do things and we can do them in cost-effective ways and we can still be practical, we can be responsible, but we will have to cut off some of the extravagance to do it. We need to work within what we have and not just keep adding to debt along the way. So I think that too will give people some hope as they realize, yes, okay, there are some actual possibilities. We might not like that we don't have certain things being funded anymore. But again, we have to look at what is extra, and we need to focus on the practical pieces that are the true needs so that we can get back on track. And then eventually we can add in some of the extras again. So a lot of this is going to be about meeting obligations, and we'll probably hear that come out too from people. I have an obligation to do this. As the leader of the country, I'm obligated to uphold, it's like public people in public office in the United States, they have an obligation to uphold the Constitution here. And so we're going to hear more about that. And that could be used also to try to push and persuade people. Like, you've got an obligation to uphold these laws. If you don't want to uphold the laws, there will be consequences. Um, so we'll probably see who is and is not meeting their obligations during this time. Now, where the mindset is going to be from the 1st through the 11th, so that first week and a half of the month, we're going to be seeing what holds true value and releasing materialism. So the mindset is really like, where is the value for people? Where can we cut the cost on things? Where can we find the balance between the work and the jobs that need to be done and giving people quality of life? And this is a time where it will also help us see who is in that mindset of quality of life, and who is in the slave master mindset of things, because they won't be able to be bought. Those people who are working on creating value cannot be bought out. They will not sell out in things. And they realize that also the challenging part of this is that people must experience things for them to really know it, to really see the value and worth in something. They need to experience it. And that is where it gets challenging for people, because a lot of times we are taking things for granted that we have. Um, and then we have to get to that point where we're standing at the edge of losing it before we understand the value of it. So that could make it a little scary for people, where they might feel like, oh, I don't know if I like this path. I don't know. Um, you know, look at what we might lose in this process. I mean, I think that could, maybe New York's going to come in the spotlight, or California is going to come in the spotlight over that, or maybe a couple of other states, and maybe stuff will come up in Colorado. I'm thinking New York probably. When people start to realize how much they're losing for certain things to be implemented, that they've taken for granted, and they're probably not going to be very happy about that, um, in there. But that's sometimes the experiences we have to get, because when we don't realize the value of what we have, sometimes we have to be at the risk of losing it before we see it. But then that brings us back into check, and that helps to get us back on track once we do realize, oh, no, this is too valuable to lose. So I think that's going to be interesting to see what happens. And I think, yeah, I'm kind of feeling like New York might be in the spotlight for that. Oh, whatever his name is, Zoran. Sohan, I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm not didn't write his name down, didn't even think about it when I did my notes. Also, we want to pay attention to areas that go into stagnation, and where people are trying to just say, let's put this on hold. Um, Things that are in stagnation, as I talked about before, they can go two ways. Sometimes they just need to be put on pause and it's not the right timing. In this case, it's because they need to come into divine alignment. There's too much corruption, too much deception, lies, manipulation around them. There's more things that have to be brought into place before they can be put forward. So patience, patience, patience. Okay. Don't get too anxious over things. Don't get yourself too stressed out again over what's moving. Just kind of keep an eye on it and go, oh, okay, that's gone stagnant now. Okay, so there's something else happening beneath the surface, or there's something that might be blocking it. Somebody's not working in integrity around it. And, but don't get stressed over it. We're gonna, again, during this time, see the truth come out. People are going to be speaking out. People are going to be speaking their mind more about things. And we will also even see people betraying friends for personal gain. These are where we again see more of those Trojan horse energies. And again, I'm not too wrapped in some of these things where, this stuff with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Jim Jordan and a couple of other people out there. There's so many points that can be made on both sides of the fence, honestly, around them. Um, and there's so many psyops going on that it's kind of like um, these might just be narratives. Some of them might be real, some of them might be narratives. Um, but we will start to see some of the truth of who's in things for personal gain or who is trying to protect their assets over doing the right thing, or being in truth and integrity. And there may be things that come out around them. So we'll have to see. And in those spaces, what I say is you stand in truth and integrity and then see who's standing there. And again, not just your perceptions, but you be in that space. You speak the truth. Don't even speak the little white lies that trips you up. And then just, honor that and keep that upheld. And that will be inspirational for other people to be in that space. From the 12th through the end of the month, we're going to be learning more about what is happening and how things are working. So this also, I think, might give some people some peace of mind when they start to understand more behind what the decisions are, more why something's been delayed, more about what's going on with things. And so I think that that's going to also be helpful to keeping people's spirits up. And I think there's also going to be news that maybe won't be what people want, like, it won't tell them the information they want to hear, but it is going to tell them what needs to be done, what needs to be worked on, what needs to be improved. Like, okay, we can't give you all of this right now, but um, this is what we're doing to work on it so that we can get it there to get the rest of it out to you. Um, so I think there's going to be some of that. Again, more this wanting to help the less fortunate. I think there's going to be more thoughts around how do we help the people that are truly in need? How do we deal with some of these things? How do we get people to health? We need to stop focusing on shoving drugs down them and start focusing on what's going to actually create health for them. That's just one example of things in there. So again, turning that around. And I think hope and even small assistance will bring success for those who are struggling. And this is again that thing, if they come out and they say, yeah, we're going to pay dividends out at this certain time and it's going to be this amount, that's going to give people hope. That's going to, as long as it's followed through on, that's going to make a big difference for a lot of people. We think about it and we think, oh, that's not a lot of money, $2,000 or whatever. But to somebody who's struggling, that's a lot of money. That can be a game changer for people. That can be just enough to get them on their feet and off the system again. So definitely those aspects and a lot of focus. I think we're going to have more news coming out around the environment, around plants, animals, quality of life again. How do we create that? How do we do the things we need to do, but still honor these components? And I think those solutions are coming. I think this is a time where we're going to hear about how we're going to turn our hardships into accomplishments. And I think we're going to start to learn of some of the plans to do that. And I think that's going to be very, very positive for people. Now, the soul energy, I always like to include this. I find it very important to do. And in the soul's energy, um, this is because this is our spirit. This is the pulse of people. Um, this is the part that gets people on board or not on board, that gives people hope, that destroys hope, whichever direction it's going at the time. And this is just as important as the mindset because this is whether our heart is in something. This tells us where the heart is in things and where people are actually caring about things. So from the 1st through the 24th, so most of the month, really, what we have here is there's going to be a lot of people are going to be seeking to ease their stress and to face what causes it. They can see that maybe things aren't going to be as bad as they thought they were or that they were perceiving them to be. Um, but they are going to have to get pushed out of their comfort zone to see some of that. So that fits in with some of the other things that I was saying in the ideas and the mindset that people need to know what holds real value and they need to be at the risk of losing what is valuable before they see that. So I think that kind of plays into this component here where people are going to get pushed into spaces that aren't easy in order to show that indeed your stress is going to be relieved. So it's kind of like that growing pains. I like to call them growing pains, that you go through because it's an unknown, unfamiliar space that people are having to step into in order to get to the greater ease. It's kind of like that work you got to put in to get um, to the comfort. And so I think it's there, and again, that will boost the spirit. So the heart is going to be in the right place with that. Simplifying things and cutting excessive spending. We're going to hear more about that. But this is a good thing. I know a lot of people worry about it and they think, oh, but there won't be this program or not. It's not necessarily that all these programs are going to be lost and gone. I know that's the narrative out there, but that's not necessarily the truth out there. The key is to remove the excess spending, and a lot of this excess spending, it's actually not going to damage the organization so much or the programs themselves as much as it is going to be cutting off the funding to the corruption that only uses the program as a front to do its work. So, when this happens, it's like other things. It's like, no, you're not alleviating the school system. You're giving people more choices of where they want to send their kids. It's like you can put more into the programs when you get rid of the excess spending and finances. When you get rid of the excessiveness, when you get rid of the stuff that is funding the corruption, you can actually focus on the programs. So I think again, for this is going to end up working out a lot better than what some people are anticipating out there. Um, but so don't get panicked over that. Don't get panicked when you start hearing we're cutting these funds and we're cutting those expenses. Don't panic. There's more going on to it. It's not going to cut off all the programs. It is going to cut off the corruption that is working under the guise of those programs. So there's a big difference in that. Also, this is going to help those more that cannot help themselves. So again, we're going to hear a lot more about helping the people who are struggling. And this is really going to raise spirits. This is really going to help people get on board with some stuff. But we do have to be careful of those people who are greedy because the greed is going to be very self-destructive, and the greediness is going to increase in those people who are already greedy. And that matches some of the other things I was talking about, where those people who want power and control are going to get greedier for power, more control. And, my heart always goes out to these people that are sitting in some of these countries that have these heavy, ridiculous, really, really ridiculous restrictions on the people. And, those aren't going to stop until people say enough and find a way to overturn the people that are implementing these things. Because it's just about greed is really all it's about. Again, on the good side, there's going to be people who are going to be shutting down the funding to some of those people. And yeah, some of them are going to get desperate and try other ways to get their resources, but I think that will end up exposing them in the long run. Now, this last week of the month, basically the 25th, so Christmas Day on, through the end of the month, in this section of the soul self, the soul energy, we've got major progression and advancements for those leaders, those people who are furthering divine presence in the world. So expect some big news to come out in that last week. Big forward momentum, big push forward. That is going to be really great. The rough side of that energy pattern is that it's assassination energy. And that means there's probably going to be retaliation for that progression. Now, for the average person, we don't really see that much more than, the name calling, shadow banning and things like that that we see on social media it gets nasty and ugly enough as it is. Um, but when we start talking about the world leaders, uh, that's where we start to see actual assassinations or assassination attempts being made. And I think there's probably a lot of precautions already in place, but we could see an assassination happening during that time, um, as retaliation. Um, so we just, again, this is not necessarily the average person doesn't necessarily have control over that so much, but we do want to be careful of the battles we're in. And again, these he said, she said, hey, he pulled my hair and she pulled my hair, or, she wears an ugly outfit today, or whatever the case is. I mean, this stuff is just petty, childish stuff. And, we need to learn to not even be involved in that. Honestly, I mean, that's just such a waste of time. It's just keeping us busy and distracted away from what's really going on and robbing us of value and quality of life, honestly. So, um, when we are in these advancement spaces, I always say just lean harder into God and divine source. Just lean harder into that and keep moving forward, because that is what is going to protect us and keep us safe, is to lean harder into that. And when we do, we can keep moving forward and keep moving forward. But it's just really retaliation from the corruption for losing power. So we do have a bit of this good versus evil battle, so to say, going on during this last week. But I think it's going to bring a lot of big news, a lot of big stuff happening, coming out in the news this last week. And major power battle energy. We need to make sure we're not getting involved in other people's battles. If it's not your battle, if it's not your issue, don't get involved in it. Okay. You're not going to come out well. But it is definitely going to expose again who's working for the people, who is working for their own power. So, given some of the things we've been seeing around Zelensky, um, I think there could be some things coming into the spotlight around him during that time. I know he's gotten an ultimatum already. So whether that carries out until then, but again, we're gonna see who's gonna make their power plays. It's gonna be a time of power plays. So it's gonna get pretty interesting there. Again, we want to observe, don't join in the division, um, and ask questions to help bring resolution to things. Don't just sit there and be a part of the battle, be a part of the solution. And there. And that's what I've got going through December. So, with that, again, subscribe to the channel, share it out. I appreciate all of those things. I'm not a big channel, but it's different than what other people are doing, looking at the energetics of things. And again, don't forget to pick up your copy of the Code Journey. 2026 is out and available. Just head over to my website, compassioncodes.com. Click on the Books tab. You'll see the Code Journey. On the Code Journey page, you will find the direct links to get you directly into either the ebook or the paperback. I like the paperback because it's a big book. I like to flip around in it in different spots. It's easier for me to follow than a digital version. But some people like both. I have people that get both copies because they like to have the digital with them, and um, they like to have the paperback at home. So whatever works for you, it's great. If you want to learn more about energetics, feel free to join us in our study sessions. They usually happen at the new moon and the full moon. It's a great group of people where we have some really cool discussions that go on. Overlaps what's happening, what people are experiencing, what's going on for them, the experiences they're having working with the book or the information. But anybody can join in there. That's all on my website as well. I also do private report work and things like that. So lots of options to take advantage of. And other than that, I will be coming back to you in about a month and sharing with you what's going to be happening, next year, starting in January. And we'll start the year over and see what it's going to bring. We have some good stuff happening in next year, and we definitely have some things that we got to be cautious of. And we want to make sure that as the good things come in, we don't get reckless and careless with that, and that we do really come around and use our resources wisely or our good fortune wisely. It's kind of like that thing that says, maybe you buy the house that you need and and put the rest aside for doing things that can be fun that you can stretch out over the years. Or, as opposed to just going out and buying that huge mansion that ends up getting repossessed because it was used everything you got. I don't know. Whatever the case is, I'm just using that as an example, but um, definitely some things to look forward to in 2026, at least in the early part of the year. So I will see you next month. Take care, everybody. Have a great holiday season. Whatever you're celebrating, whatever your holidays are, I hope they are filled with joy. I hope they're filled with happiness. I hope they're full of abundant of valuable experiences and good times and good memories and things that really open and fill your heart up. See you next month.